Oh, I think we're off and running. Let me just pop this up. We're in pre-show time, guys. Let me drag that up. I've just had lunch. I think I've got something stuck on my tooth. G'day, everyone. Popping into for our usual Friday show. Boy, have I got some stuff to share with you today. Some really interesting stuff. So say hi in the chat because we've got around about, 5-10 minutes or so of pre-show. So pop in on the live chat because I'd love to see who's in here at the moment. I'm going to open up my coffee with you guys in a minute. Hopefully there's no delay because it's saying my stream is not that good. I don't know what's going on with YouTube at the moment. Seems to be that it's just slow all the time lately. I don't know what's going on. So let's check who's on here anyway. If you don't want to watch the pre-show, just look at the timeline when we finished because I'll have that underneath. So you can basically skip and just go up to where the show starts, which is at the Oastler Images logo. But you can follow the timeline. So let's see who's in here anyway. We've got B&B Films. Tim said, David, would you do a review comparison between the Sony Hot Shoe Flash and the Godox? Yeah, if I could get a Godox Flash, Tim, I would. I may do that one day. I'd like to do that, though. It'd be really interesting to actually try that. Zoe at Moments is saying, I'm still waiting on the damn 7000 and A7S III. I'm going to talk a bit about that today. Looking forward to 8K. Brought 2 new graphics cards for it. Been testing with some red 8K files. Interesting. Nabs in 3 weeks. So it's not long off, that's for sure. Tim said, oh, and hello from Sam, Louisiana, near New Orleans. G'day, Tim. Long Rider says, I don't think they put a global shutter in the A7S III when their Pro-line cinema cameras don't have that yet. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about that stuff actually as the first story, I think. So stay tuned for that, Long Rider. G'day, Gerald. Good to see you in here. Hero saying, yay, coffee time. Gilbert saying, g'day, Gilbert. You're up very late. Is it nearly time for coffee? It certainly is. Joe saying, hello. Oh, hang on. I just jumped down. Always jumps down like that. Joe said, hello, folks. And you too, David. I just said, getting my coffee. N. Thomas said, greetings, David and everyone else. Is it us? Osaki, I think it is. Hello, David. Hello, everyone. Joe said, hey, Gilbert, I'm still recovering from all my coffees last night. Jared's saying hello from Newcastle, Australia. G'day, Jared. James is saying hello from Mississippi. Tim is saying, hello as well. Gilbert saying, hey, David, good to be here live for a change. It is good to have you on here live for a change, Gilbert. Chris said, hello, David from Los Angeles. Had a great Corona day. That's fantastic. I'm just about to have a... I've got to be careful what I... Hang on, let me just see if I can... I'm going to have a multi-coffee. I'm not... Demonetized. Oh, no. Here we go. I'm going to open it in a second. James said, pick you an area of MS. I'm not sure what that means. Rob said, looking forward to today's show. Hello from Virginia. Yeah, it's a really good one today, Rob, I think. Got stacks of stuff to talk about. Michelle is saying, hello from Southern California. G'day, Michelle. Tim is saying, I know exactly what that is, James. I used to grab a lot around Sidewell and my friend lives in... I'm not sure what that means. HD Edit's just saying hi. Aaron, g'day Aaron, good to see you in here as well. Hopefully we can all work out next week's show with you. Mark said, oh my God, is this the daily thing now? Hello all. Gilbert's saying hello. Barry said, hi David. Mark's saying thumbs up you all. Yes, please do give me a thumbs up if you can. We've got nearly 80 watching and 10 thumbs up. Thumbs up really help my channel. Like I said, I am unsponsored, so every bit of help I can get is fantastic for you guys. Casper said, wake me up. Oh, love it. Richard said, great first time catching you live. That's fantastic, Richard. Good to see you on here as well. So we've got a couple here, first timers. Shuku said, hi from Minnesota, where YouTube has no problem. Yeah, actually now it's saying the health is good now. I don't know what's going on with YouTube. Robert's saying, hey from Alabama. Anthony's saying, hi from the UK myself. So you're up late, Anthony, as well. Jamie's saying, hello everyone, looking forward to the show. We'll have to catch up later. Can only watch for a bit. You've got meetings. No worries, Jamie. Barry said little creatures. Jared said, what part of Australia are you based in? Are you talking about me? I'm in Melbourne. Joel says hello. Aaron says thumbs up. Done. Thanks, Aaron. Kevin said hello from Missouri, home of Shutterfest. Well, let me, for starters, open up. I'll just show you my little Vegas little bottle opener for when I was in Vegas. I'm just going to open up my coffee because you need a bottle opener to open up the coffee that I drink. Oh, hang on. It doesn't want to open up. Oh, there we go. What to do with the Sony cup? Oh, boy. I think I've left my Sony cup inside. I might have to drink this from the bottle. Oh, well, whatever. Cheers, everyone. Yep, haven't got my Sony cup. I must have left it inside somewhere. Why is that camera down so low? I need to twist it a bit. Hang on with me. Yeah, don't know. What's Jared saying? Melbourne is great because it's actually cold there sometimes. Yeah, well, we do get quite cold in winter here. I mean, it's not like parts where it snows. We don't snow here. But, you know, we do get what we think is cold. It's not cold compared to Europe, I suppose. But it's certainly, we feel cold when it's winter. What else have I got there? Kevin saying hello from Missouri, home of Shutterfest. Bill said hi from Tacoma. Jay Allen says, Jello, mate. Coffee opener. Yeah, I know. But I forgot my coffee cup. Now, I can just picture demonetization coming up. Well, whatever. So, look, this is what I'm drinking anyway. So, I'm drinking... Are we going to focus or not? Gets on the face and then that's it. I think it always tries to get the face sometimes. So, Cooper's Brewery is what I'm into today. It's a bit like a... It's, what do they call it? It's like a stout, I suppose, or it's a dark, really dark brew, which is what I've been drinking lately. But the other thing too, I've really got into champagne. It's so funny because, and I'll probably have a couple of glasses of that tonight with Kerry. Ever since I've been a wedding photographer, I used to hate champagne. And lately, in all the weddings, they've been having champagne in all the weddings, and I've got a real taste for it all of a sudden. So I bought 2 bottles just before when I went down and had a coffee, a real coffee, and bought 2 bottles of it there, and I'll probably plaster one of those off tonight as well. I'll be in trouble. How are we going for time? Anyway, it's just about time. I'm going to start the show because I've got so much to talk with you about today, guys, so bear with me just for a second. G'day everyone. I must be drunk already because the coffee cup's right in front of me. What an idiot. Iron Brown says David drinks too much. I know, it's bad, isn't it? You guys are a bad example with me. I mean, I'm already showing it now anyway, so whatever. If it gets demonetized, it gets demonetized. I've already showed it at the beginning anyway. So yeah, look, I'm drinking this coffee, which is Cooper's Brewery coffee. I'll be in trouble. I hope I don't get banned. Oh, well, whatever. Everyone's just saying hello. Anthony's saying my mum is enjoying her cup of English tea and her name is Shirley. She said she could wave at her. She said, could you wave at her? Hi, Shirley. How you going? Oh, I'm in serious trouble already. I usually try and hide this, but I thought I didn't bring my cup. It's not good. I've had a coffee early this morning. I was watching a little bit of the Sony Alpha show on whatever it was this morning, and I watched about 5 minutes of it, and I turned it off. It wasn't exciting me at all. It was a bit basic. I suppose if you were coming from not knowing Sony cameras or anything like that, you may enjoy it. But I watched about 5 minutes of it, and I thought, wow, this is really sort of dumbed down for the beginners, so I turned it off. In fact, I started a bit later today due to that, and I should have probably gone on at the normal time because it should normally be an hour earlier than this now due to the US and England daylight savings have all changed. So I probably will be on an hour earlier next week. So everyone is triple saying laugh out loud, flaunting it now. I know, I'm just coming back to the chat before we do start. Mark's saying 29 in Brisbane. Lovely, Mark. Don't forget, guys, I am approaching 20,000 subscribers. So I will be having a live meetup in Melbourne. When I reach that stage, I'll announce it soon. And I'll probably do a free workshop there, where we can just go around and shoot a lovely model, something like that, around Melbourne, and we can all go out for dinner afterwards. So stay tuned for that. And like I said, to say thank you, no cost is going to be involved here. It's all going to be completely free. So please join me, and it's a way of saying thank you to you guys, because I really mean, and it sounds sloppy, but it does mean everything to me that you guys support me, particularly like saying that I haven't got sponsors or anything like that. So it does really matter to me that you guys are just following for me. So that's fantastic. Aaron got an amazing gift the other day sent from one of his YouTube subscribers. So go and check that if you haven't seen it. Look at it. It's amazing, because Aaron got donated, and I'd love to know. I can't wait to see what he thinks about it. One of his subscribers gave him a XT3 camera with a whole bunch of lenses for his birthday, basically. So please, if you haven't checked that out, check out Aaron's channel, because he's got that there where he shows everything he's got. He gets a bit emotional, no wonder. But check that out, because it was fantastic, and he really deserves it, because look, I've been dealing now with Aaron for a while, and he's just such a truthful, great bloke. And mates mean everything to Australians. It really does. We have a thing called mateship here in Australia, which we are very proud of. And once we're mates with people, we're usually mates for life, and we'll do anything for our friends. And that's why I'm so happy for Aaron. I really am happy for him. So let us know what you think about that, Aaron. I can't wait to see what you think about that camera. Got so much news to show to go through with you today. Lots of rumours still, but also some really interesting things as well. So I think we're going to be in for a really great show. So get ready for it, because there's some fantastic stuff to share. Lots of rumours, also, a bit of gossip, and also some new releases and things like that. So I thought we'd have a look at all of that together today. If you're not into Sony, there are a couple of Sony non-Sony stories, but most of them are Sony. So if you don't like that, nick off. Because I don't want you in the comments saying, hey, you talk about his Sony and stuff like that. So this, even though I'm not drinking this out of my Sony cup today, because I've been caught doing this illegal stuff. Yeah, so if you're not into Sony, this might not be the show for you. Tune in to Aaron and my show on Tuesday US time and Tuesday UK time, which is more of a generic type show. Have I got any thumbs down yet? No, I haven't. So I've got no thumbs down yet, so I love it. All right, let's get started, guys, because I'm just going to quickly check that, make sure that no one's saying anything bad's going on or whatever. You're just having too much fun, Davey. I am, Joe. I always have fun. First time catching you live, busy late night. That's Alex from the UK as well. That's fantastic, Alex. Jim said, yeah, the Alpha show was really just for beginners. There were a couple more which might be more advanced. Yeah, like I said, I started watching it and it was a bit boring. Anthony said, yeah, that just cheered her up. Thanks, mate. We've got a family who live in Australia too. Haas says, hi, everyone. David, I took the Tamron lens and put it on, and it seems like it fixed the IAF issue I was having. Thanks for suggesting that. Oh, that's fantastic, Haas. I just did update on the Sigma, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Ian Brown says, David, trying to convince my wife to take a trip to Australia. Make sure you do. Oh, mate, we can have so much fun together. Aaron said, yes, I'm still in shock. That one Fuji guy, Casper said. Aaron said, thanks, David, you're amazing too. Yup, mate, for life. Tim says, sounds like the show will be going when I get back from a haircut. It probably will be, Tim. It's going to be a long one, I think. We will start talking about Fujifilm behind the photo. Yeah, good idea. Anthony said, does Sony have a 360 3D camera out? No, I don't think they do, Anthony. Jared said, I want the A7S III to come out. I'm going to talk about that as the first story in a minute. Ricky says, hey, say say it. What's the news, David? No, you've got to wait. You know how these shows go. PJ Smith said, my first time here as well. All right, let's go first story. First story, because Ricky is impatient. Did I put that in there? Yeah, I did. Oh, Joe! Fantastic. Thank you so much. This will help with the demonetize the show. I love it. That's a cracker. All right, let's go to news, because you guys are going to start getting angry at me. Cheers. Joe just gave me another one. How dare you mention Sony? What was that one there? Let me just pull this back here. OJ gave $10. I've got to drink more often. Well, I do usually, but it's usually hidden. Asaki said, that's nice looking coffee is on me. Cheers. I love it. Australia is lawless. You can't touch him. Oh, God, you guys crack me up. Fair income, it's funny. All right, let's go. Because, look, I've got some incredible stuff today. I wanted to just go through some of the rumours, and then we're going to sort of break it down to the A7S III, and I'll come back to the chat soon, guys. Because here, NAB obviously is only around about 3 weeks away, but it looks like, from what we've been seeing on the news, that the only thing we're going to see from Sony is talk about 8K. Looking at that, it looks like we're not going to see an A7000 or a S3. I think I've just been given another donation. I did. I am to Brown just gave $9.99 for the monetarization fund. Oh boy. So the only thing I think we're going to get out of this is an 8K camera, because the rumours have dried up apart from an A7S III, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. We can discuss that in a second. So it looks like the only thing that's been registered is this RX0 camera that everyone has known about for a long time. And it says fact that also there's an APS-C camera on their roadmap as well. And they're saying that one E-mount camera will be announced in Q2, 90% reliable. So they're now saying that it looks like we may get a camera before June. Now, the interesting thing was early on they were saying that was going to be the A7S III, but now it looks like it might be the A7000 that is announced before June, and then the A7S III is later this year, and it keeps getting pushed further and further back. I'll talk about the A7S III in a minute, because that's the first main story that we're going to discuss. But so it looks like at this stage we're not going to get any camera announcement in NAB. Now, we may out of the blue, but it doesn't look like we will. It looks like that all we're going to get is basically their 8K. They're going to show all the 8K stuff that they've developed. Now, whether that's going to end up in one of the Sony full frame cameras, or whether that's going to be solely for something like an FS8 or something like that, we're still waiting to see. I'm sure eventually it will probably come to the A7S line, or whatever that will be, the A9 II or whatever. But I've got a feeling it's probably not going to be in the full frame cameras yet. I think this will probably be just a discussion about 8K, Sony showing that 8K is there. And then it's just the 8K Kodak presentation that they're basically going to show. And I would think that because that's not available in their high-end cameras, you're probably going to see that will be available in their high-end cameras first, and then it may come out next year sometime in a new whatever update. So it looks like we're not going to see any cameras anyway. But that's the first story, looking at rumours and stuff like that are there. But there's also a couple of other things to here that I wanted to discuss. It's saying rumour the A7S is not going to hit the market in the first half. And they're now saying that's 70% reliable. That's why I'm saying it's probably going to be later next year now. RX model made for vloggers with dual card slots. A new video code is 50% reliable. So there is talk that there's going to be a new RX model coming out. And Sony 8K sensors and new codec specification, 90% reliable, which will probably happen at NAB. So that's probably what's going to happen at NAB. Lens-wise, we've got here that Sony painted it a new 100 f1.4, 500mm f4 and the 600 f4 lens. So you would think that those large lenses are going to be announced. I would think they'd have to come out later this year due to the fact that the Olympics is next year and they'll want to get those things ordered and out by the time the Olympics actually comes. I'm still not 100% sure. Well, I'm not even sure at all that there'll be another A9 II. I'm not. I think we may get an A7R4 before we get another A9 II. I think you might find that with the updates that the A9's getting, that just signals to me that Sony probably have got way more development than they can do on that camera at this stage. So I think really the way that camera is going to work with the new tracking and everything when it comes out, I think that's going to be good enough for anything out there. The only thing that might change that is if Nikon released the D6 and Canon released their new high-end model as well at the end of this year. If they do that and that challenges the A9, you might find then that Sony will be forced to release an A9 II. But remember, we're talking speculation here yet. There's nothing to say that they'll actually do it. There's rumors out there, but we don't know when they're going to be announced. Now, it does make sense with the Olympics that they will, Nikon and Canon will announce new cameras before the Olympics. So if they do and that challenges the A9, then we may see an A9 II. But I'm still, like I said, I'm still not 100% convinced that it's needed at this stage because the A9 is so good at what it does and that new firmware is going to take that to another level. That is almost like an A9 II. Like I've said to you before, and people hate me saying this, I would have paid for that update. And I would have paid for that update if Sony had asked me to do it, like I had to pay for the Panasonic firmware update, which I think was $100. So I wouldn't be surprised that even with the new cameras that come out, that those cameras still aren't going to beat the A9. If they don't beat the A9, and I don't think they will, if they don't beat it, Sony may still say, well, we're going to stick with the A9 as it is, and then just perhaps even release new firmware for that camera later on this year. So that's what I'm just wondering about what may happen. I'd love to know your thought on that. But there's still nothing like the A9 sensor out there yet at this stage. Nothing even gets close to that sensor. That's why I'm saying I don't think they're going to be in a hurry to do that. I think there's more chance that they will do the A7R4 before they do an A9, and that's probably a camera I'll be interested in later this year. That's why I haven't gone for the A7R3, because I've got the A7R2. I'm happy with that at the moment. Then I may just jump into the A7R4 when that's released, which could potentially be the end of this year, which will also then match the lenses like the 135, where they're saying that can resolve a 100 megapixel sensor. So, you know, there's some interesting things out there in that regard when you're talking about lenses. And remember, all the G Master lenses particularly can out-resolve any sensor that Sony have got at this stage. So there's no reason why they can't do that. When you talk, and I'm going to talk about the 135 in a later story, but, you know, when they're dealing with it, that can resolve 100 megapixel. I think that's what you're going to find later on this year. So looking at the rumors down here, it looks like we may see that 100 1.4, and I'm not sure then where the STF fits in. You know, I mean, will Sony then say not sell the STF anymore? I'm not sure if the 100 STF is needed if you've got 100 1.4. We've got a 500 f4 lens and a 600 f4. Once they've done that, Sony then are really ready to go if you're talking about wildlife and also sports, which would match perfectly for the Olympics. Even with the A9, like I said, the tracking is just incredible on that camera with the 20 frames per second. Sony may feel that they don't need to bring out an A9 II, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Rumour they're saying APS-C lenses to be announced in Q2, 1 to 2, 70% reliable. They're still hoping to bring out a 1.8 35mm lens and also a 200 to 600 lens as well. And I know an awful lot of people, even the ones that I talk to in my photography videography school, are saying they'd love the a cheap Sony 35 1.8. If they can bring out one of those that matches the 85 1.8, and then you can buy, say, remember the A7 III is Sony's entry-level camera. So if they're bringing that out as an entry-level camera, they really need entry-level glass to match that. So if they're talking about that, a 35 1.8 makes total sense, because the 35 focal length and the 85 focal length are both the perfect portrait lenses and wide angle or sort of semi-wide angle lenses to have to start with photography. And you know, everyone is screaming for a 35 1.8, and if that 35 1.8 is as good as the 85 1.8 for a reasonable cost, we're all in for a winner. So stay tuned for news on that one. I will open up chat soon, but I just want to get through all the A7S III stuff first. Cheers, everyone. Now, if we look at the A7S III rumours that are around, this is an SR4 on Sony Alpha rumours. They're saying in here that the A7S will be announced this fall and not at the NAB show. So they're now saying fall. So fall in the US is September, October, isn't it? So we're still a fair way from getting this camera. And looking at that, if it's announced in the fall, they're not saying when in the fall. It may be late form. We may be getting this near the end of the year. So this is interesting. And they're also saying, and it will have a new innovative sensor. This may be the thing that's potentially holding this up. And they're saying down here that the A7S will be announced in summer before October. The camera is going to have a new memory stack sensor, obviously like the A9. But they're saying, may this be a global shutter? And this is really interesting, because I know a lot of people are saying it's not possible at this stage to bring out a global shutter, but I'm not 100% sure that it isn't possible if they're doing this later in the year, when they are already producing some of these sensors for other camera systems out there. And they're saying the idea with this is to bring out a camera that has zero rolling shutter, which filmmakers would use a lot. So it is possible. I know a lot of you are saying it's not going to happen, but it may be possible. Sony may have reached a stage where they think, well, look, we're just going to throw everything at this full-frame sensor like they did with the A7 III. And there's got to be a reason why they're holding off so long for this, when we thought we were going to get this camera sort of late last year. And we're still waiting, so it's going to end up being a year over what we actually expected this to be. So it could potentially have this new shutter. I mean, you don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to, but it is a certainly interesting fact. There was another rumor site that was talking about this as well, that this is new camera here. And basically they're saying on this one that, I might have to move this over, just let me move it. They're saying on this one that according to the latest version, the Sony A7 III camera will arrive before October 2019. Information is coming from trusted sources, a veteran rumour mill. The camera will carry a newly developed stacked CMOS sensor. This is not the first time we have received this information, and there's a link there that you can click to. I will stick these links down below so you can have a look. But they're also saying rumoured specs of this is going to be that it's going to be 4K 60. Well, it would have to be. If they bring out this camera and it's not 4K 60, well, they're really in trouble. It's going to have 422 10-bit, and of course more battery power, increased AF accuracy, amongst many other things. The other thing too, which is interesting as well, they're saying that also it's going to carry dual-based ISO for the first time in Sony mirrorless cameras, and other rumours suggest some initial prototypes of the A7S III camera doesn't have the 30-minute recording limit. Well, I would expect that to be the case. That I would be absolutely dumbfounded if Sony don't get rid of the 30-minute recording on any of their newer cameras now that come out. They've done it on the A6400, so there's no excuse now that they wouldn't do that on all of their other cameras. But it is interesting how they're talking about this dual-based ISO. If you want to read about that, there's a link here that you can click onto. Like I said, I'll have this underneath. But it really is interesting, this dual-based stuff, because it basically gives you two ISOs in different ranges where the noise is really reduced down. So but I'm not going to go too much into that at the moment. But it's really interesting, and it also makes sense to me. They're also saying here about the recording limit. will be gone, and I would think that's definitely the case. They're also saying on this site that the Sony A7R1V is coming out. Now, it makes sense if you look at the timeline here, because they're saying the A7R came out in October 2013. The A7R2 was June 2015, so you're looking at roughly 2 years. 2 years again, the A7R3 came out, and we're now going to be, say, the middle of the year, which is why I'm saying I think we might see an A7R4 as well. And they're predicting it's going to be a new 60 megapixel sensor is going to be on the A7R4. They're also predicting on this that the A6-700, they're not calling it an A7000, they're calling it an A6-700, is expected in the year. They're saying in Q1 or Q2, which is why I said we may see an A7000 or whatever that camera is going to be mid-year. And the A7S obviously is going to be pushed way into the end of the year. And they're predicting that the camera will be a 26 megapixel CMOS sensor, 12 frames per second, 4K 60p with 10-bit output, probably to an external recorder like the X-T3 is. And that's the camera probably that will answer the X-T3. Because remember, Sony still haven't answered the X-T3. The A6400 is not at the top of the APS-C line at the moment. It's sort of around the X-T30 line. It's not... certainly hasn't beaten the X-T3 if you're talking about video functions and what, like 4K 60p, for instance, the bit depths, things like that. It has certain features that I like I love the fold-up screen. It's not an articulating screen, but at least it's got one. And probably the focus would be better on the A6400 than the X-T3. But it certainly still doesn't beat the X-T3. So I think Sony do have to answer that. And that's what the A6-700 or the A7000 is going to be. And I suppose if you're looking at what they're saying here as well, that you're saying it's going to have 4K 60 with 10-bit output. They're not talking about bit depth, so we don't know what bit depth that's going to be. But they're going to say the sensor will have image stabilization system is more improved compared to the previous generation of IBIS. So that's really interesting. And lastly in there, they also mentioned that the Sony A9 II. So they're saying there is going to be a Sony A9 II coming out. It's expected at the end of 2019. The Sony A9 II is said to be a 1DX Mark III and a Nikon D6 killer. The camera will feature 8K video recording capability, and there is a big possibility that we may see the 36 megapixel full frame sensor, improved AI-based autofocus system, and a lot of improvement compared to the existing Sony A9. Sony will sure to announce the A9 successor at the end of 2019. Now, if this is true, this scares the absolute hell out of me, because I'm going to have to tell Kerry why I'm going out to buy this camera. I mean, I can't really fathom how they could improve the A9 that much. Like, if they do, say, put 8K in that with better focus, the focusing is just nuts on that camera now, honestly. If that's improved compared to what that is, I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting. Cheers, everyone. But how exciting is it all? I should have put my Christmas hat on. Like, it is ridiculous. So they're the rumours that are coming out. So I'm going to open it up to chat, because I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say all about this, because I think it's really fascinating. But like I said, guys, oh my God, how exciting. What a time it is to be shooting Sony. Seriously. I mean, if you look at it, you think about it, that what we've got at this stage, and I'm even going to talk about the Nikon Z7, hasn't even beaten the A7R III if you look at the sensor. And all of our Sony cameras at this stage are so good. When you think of the time that they've been out, they're still matching really everything. They may not have beaten it, but they're still matching everything that has just been announced. So imagine what's going to happen when these new cameras come out. Very, very exciting time. Mark said, at least I know that the A7S III is coming in 219. I keep burping from beer. 42 Pro said, would love to be there for the 20K, but I'm suffering from David Oastler syndrome, so I can't buy plane tickets, but I have my second A7 III. Amazing. Stephen said I shoot Fujifilm. Nothing wrong with that, Stephen. Great cameras. Steve is here as well. G'day, Steve. Good to see you in here. Carl says, hello, people. G'day, Carl. I'm laughing at Casper because he says, Aaron, you're going to look like the angry photographer. I'll laugh at that's funny. A7 IV, hopefully. Yep. Oh, no, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see an A7 IV this year. That possibly will be next year, I would think. Gilbert says, I know Gilbert is one of the people that would love that 35 1.8 that I was talking about before. I think you're right about no A9 update, Aaron said. Naren said, hi, g'day, Naren. PJ says, the Nikon D6 will have 24 megapixel BSI with no AA filter. Interesting. MJ said, cheers. Jared says, A7R series has a lot of issues to iron out, so an upgrade before the A9 makes sense. Delta Dave said, did Susie not come from her... Oh, yeah. Where is Susie? Oh, you know what? I had a wedding meeting last night. I had a wedding meeting and Kerry sat on that seat. So poor Susie. Stay there. I'm going to grab her. Had to put Susie back. Tim said, the question is, what would the A9 II do that the A9 doesn't and doesn't cross over from other types, pixels or sensitivity? Well, maybe not, because if you're talking about that this could be the camera, what they're saying in those rumors, that this is the one that's going to have the 8K. This is also a camera that, who knows what they're going to put up with frame rates on that camera and things like that. I mean, I find it really hard to understand how they could really improve the focus much from what I've got now, because it's incredible now. And I very rarely ever miss a shot with the autofocus with the A9. And when that's upgraded, who knows? You know, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. Gerald said, I think the laws of physics with that mirror mechanism may prevent any digital SLR like the Canon 1DX or the Nikon Z6 from matching the A9. And that's why I'm wondering whether, Gerald, they will bring out a new A9, because I don't think that a new D6, unless they go mirrorless, which I don't think they're going to do, unless they go mirrorless or Canon go mirrorless with that, I don't think there's any way they can get up to 20 frames per second with a mirror. I don't know. I don't know if it's even possible. Yeah, you may be right. Marvin says, cheers, hello from Canada. G'day, Marvin. Trev said, a 100 f1.4 is just insane. That depth of field at 10 feet is less than 1 inch. I know it would be incredible. It really would be. MJ said, cheers, Marvin. PJ says, actually, the Nikon problem with frames per second is in the lenses. PJ saying, only the new Nikon lenses can perform at or above 12 frames per second. Canon could go higher, but the D4S will have 14. Ray said, new innovative sensor. Yep. What's a global shutter? Well, it just works totally different. You're going to have to Google it, MBW. But the main difference with it is the exposure is done all at once. So you haven't got the shutter that will start from the top or go down to the bottom like a normal one does. That's what causes rolling shutter. It's also what causes issues with flash sync. So if you can get rid of that, you don't have then any flash sync problems. You're no longer limited to the 250th of a second flash exposure like you are with normal cameras. That's all gone, and that can be a fantastic thing to get. You're sort of starting to get into the realm of medium format cameras that have that type of system. What else have we got? Ricky said maybe Photo Plus in October. Maybe, Ricky. Alex just saying up late as well. MJ said everyone in the world shutters when they see it, a global shutter. Altric said it will have the global shutter. 2:21 a.m. Boy, Gilbert, you guys are up late. Trev said it really feels like at this pace Sony have been planning to release the A7S but pulled it because too many cameras would be close in performance. If it comes in the fall, that is true. That is the true A7S. Yeah, well, I think you might be right. I think the problem is that Sony just haven't been pushed with what's been announced. And I think that's the issue at this stage. So there's nothing really been released that Sony have said, wow, we're in trouble here. Apart from the APS-C side, where the X-T3 is definitely beating Sony, that's the only sort of area where Sony have been challenged, I think, at this stage. Certainly Nikon haven't challenged it, and certainly Canon haven't challenged it. PJ said, I thought the 29.99 minute recording limit was due to taxing. It is, but I think that they've got rid of that now. It was a tax in Europe, and I think that's now been taken out. What I don't get is why so many pixels. Apparently the A7R is going to have 60 megapixels and 8K too. It's impressive, but way too many. Remember, Anthony, the thing is, and this is what I always tell people, that you don't need to use it. The thing is, I would always prefer a feature to be there on the camera than not be there on the camera. Like having 4K on a camera, if you don't need 4K, you can still shoot in 1080p. With these cameras, if it did have 8K, you would obviously have an option to shoot 4K or 1080p if you needed it. Now, it's a fantastic feature that it can actually be there. Remember, for the first time now, I just saw an advert yesterday on TV here. The first 8K TV has just been announced and released here in Australia. So no matter how you look at it, guys, 8K is coming, and it is going to hit us sooner or later. We've got issues at the moment with machines to edit it and things like that, but you don't know what it's going to be like in 2 years' time. And it would be a great option to have. I'm not saying you have to use it, but it's there if you want it. And if you have 60 megapixels, well, I'm sure you could then use it in crop mode or something else and you'd have a different resolution. If you don't need the megapixels, then you just wouldn't buy that camera. That's the thing I'm trying to say. And it's like at the moment, if you don't need an A7R3, you would buy an A7 III. You know if you need megapixels, if you're into landscape, if you're into high-end retouching, if you're into architecture, they're all things where you might need those megapixels. You know, if you are enlarging massive prints, but you know if you need that sort of camera. If you don't, it's not the camera for you. Remember, choice is a great thing. MJ says, waiting for the A7000. Oops, where were we? Haas says, David, would you be disappointed if Sony doesn't give us dual card slots and the next APS sensor to protect their full-frame cameras? Yeah, I will be. Look, remember the X-T3 has it, so I think you'll find the next high-end Sony APS-C camera will have dual card slots. I think that probably will be the case. I would be disappointed if they didn't do that, though. So I'm hoping that's the case, yes. MBW says, yes, good to see Sony's improving on the IBIS. That's a major upgrade. MJ says, got to have dual slots to compete with the X-T3. PJ says, photojournalists like myself do not want a 36 megapixel sensor, and even if it has a BSI sensor, it will not perform as well with high ISO. Sony drinking game is back. Altric says it will be a new firmware that will make the A9 too, and it may be Altric. That's what I said before. Theo said what Sony needs to do is get a good 10-bit codec in their bodies like ProRes or RAW. It's going to happen. Obviously, the next A6 whatever camera will probably have it, and the A7S III will probably definitely have it as well. We can. How can we say D6 killer? There is no D6 yet. Well, good point, Will. I'm just pointing out to you what they've said on those rumours. Gerald said, glad you made the live show to someone else. Casper said, every time you say Sony drink. 2020 is going to be a dormant year for technology. Why do you say that? MBW. Any news on the Sony A7000? Only that I think we'll get something in that range around the middle of the year. Whatever Sony call it, I don't know. Altric says, other than global shutter, I don't think there's anything else but to update the firmware. PJ says the Nikon D6 will be announced in April or June, and I've heard 24 megapixel BSI sensor with no AA filter and 14 frames per second. Nicholas said no flip, no good IBIS, no 4K 60. It's not so exciting to shoot Sony today. Well, I love shooting Sony. I mean, look, I want 4K 60 for my wedding footage and things like that, so I can slow down in 4K if I need it. But I still love shooting Sony. I still think there's nothing better than what Sony give me at this stage. How often would you shoot 4K 60? You may shoot with it all the time, Nicholas, so that can be good. If you do, no good if you do shoot with that all the time. I don't. A lot of the time I'm only shooting 1080p. For most of the shoots that I'm doing, I still would like to have an option of 4K 60. It's going to come, but there's certainly nothing better in the focus, Nicholas, so I disagree about nothing good about it at the moment. IBIS, I'm okay with how Sony works with that, like the A7 III and the A9. Doug said, any reason the 24 megapixel 1.4, the 24 is so hard to get? Because it's so popular, Doug. That's the reason why if you do want to get the 135, guys, you must pre-order it now. If you don't do it, you're going to wait 12 months. Mega Colorscape said, the Z6 is pretty good handling camera with the 2470. I was pretty surprised. Yes, it is. And the Nikon is actually quite a good release, Mega, and it's not bad at all. It's crippled, though, by only having one card slot. That camera, for what it's spec'd at and the cost, having one slot is ridiculous. It certainly puts it out of me using it for a professional shoot. Also, the low light focusing was nowhere near as good as what I was getting with my Sony. And Photomic will tell you that if he comes in live later. It hunts a little bit with focus. The eye autofocus looks like it's improved with the new firmware. I haven't tested that yet. It does look like it's improved with that new firmware, but it still doesn't look like it grabs the eye from so far away. I still think the Sony eye autofocus is probably a generation ahead. And the other thing too is, remember, we're just about to get the new eye autofocus and things and tracking and stuff like that that's coming out shortly, that's going to make the Sony cameras even better. Barry said, I wonder about the cost. My missus is in the accounting needs your glasses. Mark said, which A7 issues are you talking about? James said, do you think Sony will ever release a fisheye zoom? Us underwater photographers need one. Not sure. Remember, if you're dealing with really ultra wide type stuff, you can just use an adaptive lens. It's like if you're dealing with I've gone blank. It's like if you're dealing... Oops. No, I didn't. It's like if you're dealing with architecture and you have the lenses where you can adjust. Someone in the chat will let me know. I've gone blank, where you actually can adjust the way the lens looks to take out the distortion. Well, they're all manual focus. So if you've got lenses like that, just buy manual focus ones and adapt them. I just want the A9 firmware. Me too. I just can't wait for that to be released. Chris said, any word on the A9 firmware yet? Nope. Sony only said that they were going to release that sometime this month. Mega Colorscape said, about Sony, do you think the firmware can install continuous IAF for video with the turn on option? I don't know yet, because we're still waiting on the final releases of those firmwares to come out. Any news on the firmware? No, nothing yet. I'm going to have to scroll down, guys. We better keep moving on. Tilt shift lens. Thank you so much, Lee. Yeah, and like I said, there's no reason for Sony to bring out a native tilt shift lens, because like I said, they're always manual focus anyway. So just use it with an adapter and just manual focus away. All right, so let me keep going. Like I said, we've got stacks of news to go through today, guys. All right, so next story. I'm going to go on about the 135 lens. Let me just move this down. Now, this is incredible. When you think what voodoo sort of stuff Sony must have done on this 135 GM that's coming out, they're saying that it's the sharpest lens that they've ever tested. lens of its kind. Will hit the stores next month, but they're saying in here it's already dropping jaws with its sharpness. According to the one new test, and this is from Lens Rentals, they're saying it may be the sharpest lens of its kind on the market today. And I'm not going to go over this completely, but like I said, I'll put these all down below. But they've done the MTF charts, and they're saying that the sharpness on this lens is absolutely jaw-dropping. They're saying they've only ever seen it before on lenses that cost like this $12,000. I mean, like I said, how lucky are we that we're shooting Sony, guys? Like I said, they've tested this lens up to 100 megabits and they're saying it still doesn't out-resolve. They're saying an A7rIII, this lens would laugh at the resolution that was actually thrown at it there. And like I said, there's a whole article that you can read here about it. Now, look, don't get so ed up on lens sharpness and stuff like that. And I've discussed this before because I've said to people before that it may the image is more important, or the story is more important than how sharp a lens actually is. But there's a couple of factors on this that you're going to get the lens anyway, and then having a lens that obviously can resolve detail at these ridiculous megapixels certainly can be an advantage later on if you do have upgrading. It's almost, and like most of the G Master lenses, you are future-proofing your purchases because they are out-resolving anything that is available now at this stage. So I think the normal G Masters are rated around 50 megapixel, but I believe they're saying on this that this will be, they've checked this at 100 megapixel and it's still working fine and holding all the details. So they certainly have done some incredible voodoo with this lens, and this lens particularly is interesting me. I was thinking about getting the 24 G Master as my first lens, but this may be the one that I buy. I'm definitely going to test this the second it's out, and then if I find I like that focal length and I like the look of it, I might purchase one. So I'm pretty excited to try this one out. I really am. Now, being a portrait photographer, wedding photographer, I photograph a hell of a lot of dancers, concerts, that sort of stuff for professional clients. This may be the perfect lens for that, because a 135 may be the perfect lens, particularly for things like weddings and doing these dance events for me particularly. And it probably is almost the ultimate portrait lens for getting that beautiful compression and facial features and stuff like that, particularly if you're dealing with head and shoulders. So I'm excited to try this lens. It's also got that typical thing you're now seeing on the G Master, which is the aperture declick ring. You've got your manual focus switch and also a focus limiter on there, and your focus programmable buttons that you could do different things through those programmable buttons there. But like I said, I will share this, but it looks like Sony really have nailed it. Now, the interesting thing is now, I think this lens particularly has taken Sony to a new level. It's probably the first time that we really have been able to boast a Canon, particularly. And look, I've always said before that Canon, I do think, make the best overall lenses, and I still do believe that if you're talking about overall lenses, like the R lenses that have been released are pretty amazing. Beautiful, in fact. But I think Sony now, with this lens particularly, and if this is the way that they're going to produce lenses from now on for their G Master lenses, Sony have gone on to another level. So not only have we got now the best cameras, but we're now starting to be able to say for the first time, I believe, that Sony lenses are better than Canon. And this is a really interesting thing. And this is only early, but they did test 10 copies of this. So it's not like they tested one copy of this and they could have got fake results. They actually asked for 10 copies and they were supplied with 10 copies. And like he said, the numbers blew him away. And this is why I'm saying to you, that, guys, we can boast now we've probably got the best lens in the world of its type. And this is just incredible. And like I said, if they are going to produce this for their next lenses that come out, the 100 f1.4, and probably the other lenses that we're going to get like this, who knows what's going to happen with Sony. And like I said, I'm just so blessed that I did make the move when I did, like when I sold all my Nikon gear and I saw the writing on the wall. And I'm now really starting to see the fruits of that move, that they really are now pushing the boundaries. When you think how long they've been out there and the quality they're now starting to get into these lenses is nuts. And I want to open it up to chat to discuss that. So let's open it up to that, and I'll see if people are chiming in on that. But like I said, how fantastic are we at the moment to be shooting Sony? We really are. MJ intervalometer, I believe that's coming with a new firmware, MJ, with the A7 and the A9 firmware. I believe we're getting that intervalometer. MBW says, about the IBIS, I just wish you could walk with a GorillaPod vlogging. Yeah, I don't think, look, remember, no one has done that yet with full frame. And that's one thing that you've got to understand about that. Yes, Panasonic do it, Olympus do it, but then you're dealing with Micro Four Thirds. It's a big deal to be having really, really good IBIS if you're working with a full frame sensor, because it's so much bigger and it's going to move around so much more. So it's interesting in that regard. So I'm not sure whether they'll be able to get it much better. They might be able to sort of use AI and do things like that. I mean, the GoPro does it pretty well using software. So there may eventually be a mix between the internal IBIS and the camera IBIS, the lens IBIS, and then using some software to do it. But I can honestly handhold the Sony cameras very, very well. But I must have a fairly steady hand, and I can shoot long exposures handheld, and I'm quite good at it. And I've shared some photos that I've done with that before, where sometimes holding almost up to a second, and they're sharp enough. And I do handhold video all the time, and it's acceptable, the results I'm getting from it. Is it like the G5? No. Is it like an Olympus? No. But it's certainly good enough, I think. I mean, they could improve it, yes, and they probably will. Sagan said, Sony should make you a Sony ambassador. Oh, thank you so much, Sagan. Rui says, are you going to get the 135? Probably. I'll let you know when I have a look at it. Look, I'm sure when that is released, I'll probably be able to get one, if I want one. But I'll go and I'll check it out, and I'll probably will fall in love with it looking at what everyone else is showing me. Now, there is some issues. I mean, look, there's not issues, but like Manny Ordis showed it, and he showed it against the Sigma. And the thing was that the results do look very, very similar. The Sigma 135 is an incredible lens, their Art Series lens. That is a beautiful lens, and you will get by far amazing results with, if you can't afford to go for the Sony, and that's all you can afford, you'll get outstanding results with the Sigma 135. No doubt about it. And probably, if you looked at them side by side, you may not be able to tell the difference in a standard shoot. Remember, Lens Rental does charts and things like that, and that's not directly related to what you would see with your eye. But the big difference for me is, and this is the big difference, is that the Sony 135 is excellent focusing in low light. Now, I'd pay the difference for that alone. Now, if you can't afford that, I can totally understand that you might say, well, look, I'm just going to go and get the Sigma 135 and I'll live with that, and that's fine. But if you're like me and you're dealing with doing events, weddings, these dance shows that I do, things like that, where low light is critical, it's worth paying the extra to have that low light focusing. And the low light focusing of the Sony particularly is way ahead of what you'll get on the Sigma. Way ahead of what you'll get on the Sigma. And I'm talking about even the native one or the adapted one. You're going to get way better focusing on that. If you watch Manny's video, it really beat the 85 1.4 like substantially. It was way better than the 85 1.4 in low light. And I've always known that the 85 is not fantastic in focusing. The 85 1.8 is much better. The 1.4 is just not as good. And that's due to the new motors that now are in this. And like I said, I'd buy it for that alone. And they're the things that I'd like to test about it. So Rui, maybe. Knight Rider said, for high-end APS-C, Sony should think about, should be a global shutter sensor. Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that for APS-C at this stage, though. Look, it will come, but it's just a matter of when. It's win camera conspiracies. Gerald said, when are you ordering the 135 1.8 GM? We won't tell Kerry. Gerald, I won't be pre-ordering it, but I might walk past a shop. Remember, camera companies now do look after me due to the fact that I do have a following now. So I may be able to get one if I want one. And that's the thing. So stay tuned. I'll let you know. 42 Pros says, MJ Adams, I'm pumped about it. Primary reason I pulled the trigger on the second A7 III. Mark said, I am sitting on the money for the 100 f1.4. That will be a beautiful lens, Mark, particularly if they have the same technology as what they've got with the 135, and I'm sure they probably will. Zoe at Moment says, if the A7R 1V comes out, I will sell my A7R III or just buy the A7R4 as a second body with the A7S III. For video, with the Tamron 16 to 35 2.8, you mean the 17, yep, and the new Sony 135 1.8 and the 24 1.4, now to convince my wife. Tamron Australia contacted me. They still haven't got pricing on the Tamron yet, and they still can't tell me when they're going to get one here in Australia. When it does happen, I will get a pre-release one and I'll review it. Trevor said, I think we're at the point where the actual increase in overall sharpness will be quite small. Sure, a new lens will be sharper, but only just so over a lens from 2018 versus from 2000. And like I said, you have to read these charts with a grain of salt, because really you won't like. And if you look at any of the reviews, you'll see the ones that have done the Sigma against a Sony. The image looks basically the same. Charts can show something totally different than what an image to your eye will look. Remember, you're dealing with figures, maths. But, like I said, I would pay it alone for the D-click focusing ring, to have the extra controls, the buttons that are on the lens, and to have the focus. The focusing is the biggest thing for me about that over the Sigma. So that's something. Mark's just saying Kerry's listening. Luckily, she never watches these. Thank God, she's at work anyway. But yeah, she doesn't watch the live shows. So I think I would pay the difference just for the focusing alone. And remember, if you're a professional earning money from your photography, it's an easy thing to justify. If you're not, you may just want to go and get the Sigma, because the Sigma is still going to give you outstanding results, just like the Sigma 105 will, the 1.4. Again, a gorgeous lens, which will give you fantastic results. Yeah. Like I said, I'd pay it alone just for the focus. Knees and toes, knees and toes. PJ Smith said, I wouldn't hold out for the 100 1.4, buy the 135 1.8. Zoet says, exciting times. It is. I know, it's amazing. Mark said, Kerry is not listening. Did you order that 135? Oh, I love it. Mega said, well, it seems that Sony is improving their GMs. Yes, they definitely are. Definitely are. G-Master cost the price of gold. Well, I'm going to talk about lenses, and they're not so much what you think, Charbox. Wait till I discuss that story later on. PJ Smith says, my Sigma 135 stays in my bag most times. What, you don't use it, Mark? Or Aaron said, Fujifilm, I love it. Gilbert said, best thing I ever did was sell my Canon gear and switch to Sony, and switch to mirrorless too. I totally agree with you, Gilbert. Gerald said this new Sony lens Voodoo started with the 400 2.8 GM and the 24 1.4 GM, and they are just rocking and rolling now. All GM lenses are said to resolve up to 100 megapixels. Raw says dual UHS 2, and will the A7R III autofocus be as good as the A9? You're talking about the A7R4? Well, we don't know. PJ Smith said, Mark, I see what you do. I see. What do you use instead? The 85 GM? Charbox said the S1 has much better IBIS than the A7 III, but still Panasonic G9 Micro 4/3 IBIS is the best by far. I think the coatings on newer lenses also help. Very true. Gordon says, as a wedding photographer, David, would you get the 70 to 200 2.8 or the 135 GM? Well, I can tell you, Gordon, I would get the 135 ahead of the 70 to 200. I already have the 70 to 200 f4, and I'm happy with that for what I'd use it for weddings. I prefer the 135 because it's a 1.8 and it just seems like it's just a beautiful lens, and I love primes. So yeah, I'd get the 135. That's just myself. A 2.8 aperture, I don't mind at all. I love the Tamron 28 to 75. 2.8's fine, but if I am going for that killer shot, usually I'll go with a faster lens, particularly if you're dealing with low light stuff. The 135 is a good lens, but I wouldn't sell my baddest for it. Too similar until I shoot the A7R4. Mark said, I am a bit spoiled. I have the Zeiss 50 1.4, Canon 85 1.2, Sony 85 1.8 around the range, and having the A7R3 gives me a crop, and that's a good point. Gerald says, I have the 70 to 200 GM. It is heavy, but a stunning lens, and I use it for weddings in low light. David has the f4.1 and loves his. You could get by with just the 135 for sure. Joe said, shot 4 weddings with my Sigma 135 and had no issues in low light. Thomas said, but now the Sony is making the Zeiss lenses, I'll be stopping by Zeiss. Mark said, that 70 to 200 f4 is stunning. It is. It's a great lens. And I still use the Canon 2.8. Thomas said, they do need another 85 1.4 or 1.2 that's faster. I'm going to talk about the Samyang 1.4 shortly, though. Delta Dave says, I don't give a hoot how the lens performs in the lab. What matters is how it shoots brick walls. Oh, I love it. Trev said, something interesting from Sony for me would be finally to have an f1 lens. Look, they're going to do it just for bragging rights. I'm sure of it. CC says, hey, Dave. G'day, CC. Mark said the 135 is just a bit too long for fashion, but does come out for special times when I need the softness. Gerald says, I used to use my Nikon and Canon 70 to 200, so it was a no-brainer for me to choose a 70 to 200 f2.8. I also use that lens with the 2x converter as well. I think global shutter is a game changer, but high-end cameras would drop sales. All right, let's go next story. How long have we been on anyway? Probably an hour, and I'm only through a couple of stories. I'm going to get in so much trouble again. I wanted to just quickly show you this. I'm going to skip through a couple of stories before we go to questions, guys, because otherwise we're never going to finish. Samyang, this is a beautiful looking lens. It really is. I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to be optically yet until we see it reviewed, but it does look like Samyang have done a very good job at an 85 1.4. And Samyang tend now to have ironed out all of their issues that they had early on. And they're now making really nice glass. Like, it's a lot quieter than what it used to be. The focus has improved way more than what it used to be. But this is the first leaked images that I've seen of it. But it really does look like a stunning piece of glass. And they really are lifting their game. So good on Samyang. And it looks like it probably will be a reasonably priced lens as well. So if you are in the market for a pretty good 85, this could be the lens for you. It's an SR5. I think this is probably going to be what's going to be announced in the coming days, but stay tuned for some announcements on that. The next story is the Nikon Z7 test. I wanted to talk to you about this because this is what I was saying before about how good that the Sony sensors actually are. When you think about that the Z7 has just come out and how long the A7R3 has been out, and that the overall score basically of the Sony is ahead of the Nikon Z7, it's pretty nuts when you look at what Sony have done, isn't it? And this is the reason why I'm saying to you that they haven't been in any hurry to release anything new, because they haven't had to. This is the really interesting thing about this. Like, you look at low light, and low light particularly, if you're dealing here, is better on the Sony than what it is on the Nikon. The only thing, I suppose, where it's better is it's slightly better in the portrait color. Very close, though, in what it's looking at. Dynamic range is a fraction better in the Sony. But how good is Sony when you think this has been out for the time? It's been 2 years. The Nikon Z7 has been out, just coming out now. And Sony is still equal to what it is and actually bettered it by a fraction. It's nuts. Like I said, it's incredible. And the A7 III has better dynamic range than the A7R3, so that's really interesting as well. To continue on, I'm just going to open up Q&A at the end because I thought we're going to be here too long. I just wanted to share this because this is a really interesting comparison. I always hear it all the time that our Sony lenses are so expensive. You know, it's ridiculous, the cost of lenses. Well, guys, it's not true. And this is a fantastic article to have a look at the cost of lenses and things like that to show that Sony is not as dear as what you think it is. And I think this is a fantastic article to read. So I'm going to skim through this, but please, like I said, I'll leave the link down below. Please have a look at this because I'd really be interested for you to have a look and give me your opinion down below. But let me just come back to this and show you. So what this photographer, Terence Lamb, has done, he's priced different lenses for each system. And he's basically gone for the 24mm 1.4, the 50 1.2 or 1.4, 85 1.2 or the f1.4, 90 or 100mm macro, 135 f1.8 or the f2 lens as well, the 16 to 35 or the 14 to 24, 2470, 2.8, these are all the 2.8 lenses here, 70 to 200 2.8, the 100 to 400 5.6, and a popular pro body in the price as well. So this is where it gets interesting because I suppose what he's saying there is that he's tried to pick lenses that most people would use in the general photography community out there. So this is where it's really quite interesting what he's done. So if you look at the figures itself, here, let's have a look. So he said Sony, for instance, he's chosen, this is Sony FE mount, full frame, and he's given you a price breakdown of all the lens costs buying that from new, and he's priced it there with the Sony a7rIII, and I think he's tried to match bodies roughly about the same area. And the price of having all of that system all up comes out to $20,380. So that's the figure anyway. Now, you may want to look at your own pricing, but I'm just giving you this as what he researched and came out with. So this is fascinating. So he said that a Sony system, a full system basically, with the a7rIII is going to cost you $20,380. If you went to Canon EF, so this isn't dealing with the R series, the EF is $18,590. Now, if you started to put EF lenses on that, it would jump up. So it's not that different if you're dealing from between Sony and Canon. You're dealing with $2,000 difference. Now, that might sound a lot, but it's not if you're dealing with getting a whole system like this. So we're saying there that it's $18,590. If you go to the Nikon F mount, and again, this isn't the latest system. This is just talking about F mount with a D850, the D850. Yep, they're $19,013.55. So you're dealing with what's that? It's $1,300 difference or something compared to the Sony as against Nikon. Again, interesting. If you go to Pentax, Pentax is definitely way cheaper if you look at how Pentax is, because Pentax is $13,072. Just make sure I can show you the Nikon there was $19,1300. L mount, if you went to that, it's more expensive. So the L mount Panasonic alliance as such, with the Panasonic SR1 has come out to $23. So that's by far the dearest system that's out there in full frame. It's about, what was that compared to Sony? It was, it's about $2,000 dearer than what Sony is. Was it 2,000? No, it's a bit, yeah, it's over $2,300. So by far the dearest is the L mount alliance as such. I feel like Jared Poland. XT3 again is lovely and cheap. I mean, it's not cheap, but I mean it's a lot cheaper than if you were dealing with full frame. But I suppose if you dealt with Sony APS-C cameras, that would also probably be a similar figure. So if you wanted a similar system in Fuji APS-C, it's $12,900. So you definitely save a fair bit of money by going to APS-C. Panasonic Olympus is roughly about the same price as Fuji. So you just have to make a decision really on which system you'd like to go at. So in summary, this is it. So the Sony was 20,380, Canon was 18,590. Now that's not giving R-glass in there, which would put that above probably the Sony. Nikon was 19,000, and that hasn't got the Z series glass either. Pentax is 13,000, Leica is 39. Panasonic is 23. That's the L glass, so that's the dearest if you're talking about the normal full frame lenses cameras out there. And Fuji is 12,940, and the Olympus is 12,986. So there you go. So next time someone tells you that Sony lenses are expensive, you can say that's absolute complete crap. If you buy everything from standard, it's not. It's basically all on parity now, and that was a really interesting article, so I hope you enjoyed that. Second last story, I wanted to share this because Godox, it looks like if you do want to get the new Godox V1, you may not get it because Profoto apparently are going to take them to court, and I can understand why. Because if you look at the design, it is a direct rip-off. I mean, it is a ridiculous rip-off of what Profoto have done. And I did always wonder why they've never sued before. But if you read this article, it looks like Profoto actually are going to do one. In fact, they're setting up a Chinese business center that's going to look for infringements that are actually out there. And they're basically saying that the Swedish Profoto is threatening to sue Godox for patent infringement in order to stop the V1 from hitting the market. And even their accessories are exactly the same, like exactly the same. And they're saying that this has happened similarly with something else, and I'll see if I can find that in a second, where it did stop it coming to the market. They're saying basically in outward appearance, features and specs, the Godox V1 is strikingly similar to the Profoto A1. Both flashes feature the round head, magnetic mount for attaching modifiers, a Fresnel lens, and LED modeling lights and more. But I think you're going to find they probably are going to sue. They're saying here that it took Profoto 4 years of product development, which 10% of sales and revenue is funded into, to create the A1, and the Profoto has filed for seven different patents related to the flash. And they're saying here, this is the interesting thing, that Profoto says various businesses, importers and retailers risk getting caught up in the dispute legally if they decide to market the Godox V1, if Godox continues with launching the flash. Profoto takes its intellectual property seriously and will initiate legal action against such flash manufacturers and distributors. They're saying that Profoto writes in a draft of a press release by this company, and it says, and these threats seem to carry weight. It was just last year that Carl Zeiss accused a South Korean lens maker, Samyang, of copying its designs, and the German company succeeded in getting those lenses pulled by distributors and retailers. So I think you're going to find that Profoto may win this one. So if you were really looking forward to getting the Godox V1, you may be out of luck. It'll be interesting to see how far Godox push this. But I would be very surprised if Profoto don't win, because it is an absolute direct copy of what they've done. Like, almost, well, it's exact. Even the accessories are identical, so I don't think they're going to win any court case. So stay tuned for that. Last thing before we open up to Q&A is and I just did update it. The Sigma MC11 has been updated. There's a new firmware update for that now, and I believe it works doing some things with the A9. It also fixes all of these lenses or something that's mentioned through here. But it does say Sigma's also updated the firmware for its MC11 EF adapter to improve functionality and compatibility with the above lenses. Specifically, it improves the image stabilization functionality when used with the Sony A9 and the A7 III. When in-camera stabilization is set to auto, and it also fixes the 150 to 600 lens as well. So that's it, guys. We're going to open up to Q&A. Oops. We're going to open up to Q&A. Where are we? I think it's that one. Love to know what you think about that. So let me come down to where I started the last story, because we did skip quite a few things in that story. No, it wasn't there, was it? Where were we? Oh, here we go. 67 minutes, we were saying at that stage. They always go long, these shows. Is there any mention on the successor to the A6400? I talked about that to say that I probably believe that it's going to be middle of the year sometime. And the A7S at the end of the year, it looks like at this stage. Gerald says, can't see the other images, screen images. Oh, did I miss it again, Gerald? Did I? Sorry. Sometimes it doesn't switch. You have to double click sometimes, so sorry if I've missed all that. Gerald says, yes, of course, I still have the 770-400, which was a charmer. They're both Sony sensors. Yeah, I think they probably are. Basically, that Nikon Z7 and the Sony A7 is probably the same sensor. I think I agree. PJ says, unless the Samyang 85 1.4 is amazing, I don't see them selling many. Most wedding and portrait photographers already own 85 1.4 or 1.2. Gerald said, 150 to 600 is so much fun. That I have the A9. I can't wait for 20 frames per second lenses. Not sure what that was there. Mark said, Gerald, that's interesting that I don't exactly do sports and wildlife stuff. Oh, I think he was answering to Gerald. Tim said, back from a haircut. Should be an hour to go. Delta Dave said, good on Profoto. Look, I know a lot of you are not going to like me saying that because a lot of you love Godox, but look, I have to defend Profoto in what they're doing here, guys. Now, it is a direct copy of what Profoto have done. Now, I'm not bagging Godox. They are an amazing flash and they're fantastic for what they produce, but they should think of their own ideas and not basically copy another product. This is sort of rampant in the whole of the industry. The problem is Godox probably wouldn't have come out with that design. They certainly wouldn't have made it look exactly like that unless Profoto had brought that out. So they've just reverse engineered it and copied it directly. And I look, no matter what you think, and look, you can say to me, till you're black and blue, that yes, the Profoto is $1,000. It's overpriced. It is incredibly expensive. I agree with you, but they did develop that. They did research it. They have spent the money into doing that design. They've paid for designers, engineers, and then to have someone coming in and blatantly ripping it off is not ethical. And I fully back Profoto for doing that. I think that if Godox were going to do something else, they should just make their own design and come out with one that's not a blatant copy. And the problem is, it's not only the flash that they've copied, it's the accessories as well, like identical. They are all exactly the same as what Profoto have done. So it's wrong. Now, I know it's more expensive, and I can totally understand you saying, yes, but Profoto's $1,000, this is only so much money. But it's still direct stealing. It's like the exact same problem. If you'd invented something, and this, you would be arguing black and blue, that if you'd invented something, you'd taken it to market, and then a Chinese company ripped that off the day you put it out, and then you lost all your money, you would be screaming. And that's exactly what's happening to Profoto. And you've got to remember that companies like Profoto are, and look, I use their gear, and I'm honest about that, but they don't pay me to use their gear. I just use it. Companies like Profoto, you want to be still out there because they are innovating, and they cause other people to also innovate. If those companies disappear, the innovation is gone. So you should be supporting that. It would be like someone directly copying Sony exactly. Like if someone brought out an A9 exactly, like I'm talking in identical, with the identical sensor, identical lenses, and then release that camera as another name brand, Sony would sue. I can tell you, Sony would sue that quickly, and you guys probably would be defending Sony. So you've got to think about that. When Stephen says it's massively overpriced, I agree with you, Steve. It is ridiculously priced, but that's irrelevant to this. It's a direct copy. It's plagiarism. It's a direct copy of something else that's out there. It's like if you've taken a shot and then someone has done a direct copy of that shot, you would have grounds to appeal. The same with music. If someone takes a direct copy of your music, you've got grounds to actually sue. And I can understand Profoto doing that, and it's got nothing to do with price at all, Stephen. So saying it's overpriced is irrelevant, mate. It's got nothing to do with it. It's a direct copy. That's the issue. And I hope Godox do produce something, but they should produce something of their own. What else have we got? PJ Smith said, I really wanted to buy a Godox V1. I'm sad now. Well, I'm not saying it's not going to come out. They may fight it, but I can't see them winning that, because if it goes to court, there's no way I think they can get away with it. 0007 said, Profoto A1 though, 1,000 for a speed light. If Godox can do essentially the same light for less, good on them. But like I said, 000, it's not the point. It's the copying part that's the issue here. They've just copied the Profoto light, and I think that's wrong ethically. And this is the point you're not getting. That it's the same as stealing a song that is exactly the same. It's intellectual property. It doesn't make it right, mate. This is the thing I'm trying to say to you. I'm not justifying Profoto cost at all. That's not what I'm saying. If you think Profoto is too expensive, don't buy it. The issue I'm saying here is that they've totally copied something exactly, and it's not ethically right. That's all I'm saying. Well, they did. They won with that last lens, Stephen, so I don't think you're right with what you're saying there. Delta Dave said, people go into near bankruptcy over every new camera body, then whinge about the price of quality lighting and glass, something that has a lot more to do with improving one's image quality. Gerald says, the Chinese have just got so much money to fight Profoto. Don't assume it is a slam dunk for Profoto. US companies haven't been able to stop Chinese. Well, they did with that lens, Gerald. See, it's not only that though, Gerald. They can sue the actual suppliers as well. This is where suppliers have to be careful. Ken said, you think Sony will remove the 29-minute? No, they won't on the firmware update, Ken. I don't think that's going to happen. What else have we got? Triple says, yeah, I've seen Godox accessories. The speed lights don't look at all similar to me. Some things have an inherent similar design. Now the speed light accessories are identical. They are identical to the Profoto ones. I've not seen the patents, but I tend to agree with you that you cannot patent a round head speed light. Well, I'm not saying they can patent the round head, but they can certainly patent how it looks and everything else. Well, let's wait and see. I disagree. Stephen, no need to get aggressive though about this, because it's a point of view. You may not agree with it against Delta Dave, but everyone is allowed an opinion. Snooper says, good on Profoto. Godox is garbage thieves, so Godox is selling garbage. I don't think this stuff's garbage at all, Snooper. I mean, I'm not saying that. Godox make fantastic lights. And see, this is the difference to how most people like me talk. I think Godox are fantastic for what they do. I think that Godox lights are terrific. And if I was just starting in photography now, I would probably buy Godox. But I'm fully into the Profoto system. So for me particularly, I love Profoto in the fact they never let me down, never misfire. There's other things that I really adore about them. But I think Godox lights are also fantastic. Really, really good lights. But they shouldn't be copying another light supplier. All that will happen is innovation will be destroyed, and that's bad for everyone, and that's what I'm trying to say. Delta Dave said, wait till you try and get hold of Godox CS. Erica says, hello everyone, just joined. You can start now. Welcome, Erica. Mark said, read the MC11 adapter. Do not lose that cable. Yeah, I know. I thought I'd lost it, Mark, and I had to find it. I kept it in the original box. So that's where I found it. Because, yeah, you can't get one. It's bad that they used a proprietary connector. It should have just been a normal USB lead. It's a pain, actually. MJ said, the only reason they can do it cheaper is they stole the research and design. And this is the problem. This is why I'm trying to say this just isn't a thing against Godox and Profoto, guys. It's a thing against Everyone. You should not be able to knock off something that a company has developed. And this is why I'm saying that this is so ethically wrong. And I can't believe some of you will support it, because it's like I said, it's like if you were stealing music. You can't just steal music and do something that's word for word and note for note. You can't take a photograph and then deliberately rephotograph that exactly the same. You will be sued. All these things are subject to copyrights because someone has put their intellectual property into that. And I'm not saying Godox are wrong. Clearly they've been getting away with it, but these Chinese companies shouldn't be allowed to do this. If a company can do something like that, like if an American company can do it, if a German company can do it, Swedish company can do it, whoever they are, they should be protected. And that shouldn't be allowed to be blatantly copied. And I'm not protecting Profoto, I'm just protecting copyright in general. That it shouldn't be allowed to happen, guys. It's unethical. And I just think it will destroy innovation. And I just don't think we should actually allow that to happen. 0007 says, yes, a direct copy isn't appropriate, but innovation could be suppressed too if people had to be too concerned about lawsuits. And that's the problem to me. And I've discussed this when I saw the Godox V1 released initially. I said, boy, this is such a direct copy of what Profoto had announced. And it is. Like I said, go to the Profoto A1 page, have a look at the accessories. Go to the Profoto, go to the Godox V1, have a look at the accessories, guys, and they are the same. It's a direct rip-off, and it shouldn't be allowed to happen. Godox should come up with their own design, like they have with the AD200. I mean, that's what they should be doing. Gerald said, my bet is that Godox will get to be able to sell these, David. I respectfully disagree about the turnout of this, even if I agree about the ethical issues. Well, let's wait and see, Gerald. It'll be interesting to see. Stay tuned. Hope it doesn't get announced, even though I probably would like to buy one because they haven't got a Sony one, but I just hope it does get stopped. Mega Color Science says, I like that car reference: Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fujifilm. Godox can totally make their own products soon. I mean, look at the Dodge Charger and the Honda Accord. All right, guys, that's about it. Don't forget I'll be back with Aaron's show next week. Fire away for some questions if you still have some. I'll be back with Aaron again next Tuesday, US time, for the Behind the Photo show. So please follow us on that one. Really looking forward to that. Hopefully that works. We had some issues last time. Also in the chat down below, any questions about today, love to know what you think about all of this, because I'm sure I'm going to get some interesting ones about the Godox. Love to know your opinion about that. I do always definitely read every single question, and I usually put a little love heart or something like that. And often I will actually even answer the questions too. So unlike a lot of YouTubers that don't reply to people, I do. And I think it's bad to say, please leave your comments down below. And most YouTubers don't. They don't even read them, I'm sure of it, because there's nothing even been looked at and they never answer them. Well, I always try to. So please leave that down below. There's some more questions which I'll go on in a minute. Please, if you can, I'd love a thumbs up. It does mean a lot to me. As you know, I'm unsponsored, doing this basically without any sponsorship at all. So having thumbs up means I get out there and it's shared. So I really would appreciate if you can give me a thumbs up. That does mean a lot to me. Obviously, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the show. What else have we got? Venom said, my neighbour owns a company in China and the copying and espionage is so bad. He is selling the company. Well, that's one of the reasons, yeah, and it doesn't surprise me. Mega Colorscape said, the look is one thing, the engineer is another. Gordon Liu says, as a photographer, all the hard work we do to produce an image, imagine if someone is stealing your image and using it commercially. While I don't agree on pricing, ethics should be applied to all. And this is why I'm saying that to you guys. You're all, well, not all of you. I mean, I'm saying you've got to be very, very careful, because some of you have been very, very quick to say, yeah, Profoto, whatever, they're the most dear price out there. Well, if you were a photographer and you'd been scammed, someone had taken your photo, posted it online, made money from that, I'm sure you'd be the first to scream. And you've got to think, you can't have it, it's not different, it's the same. You've got to think the same way for everything that's out there. And you've got to be very careful about people saying, yes, just don't worry about intellectual property. Don't worry about copyright. It's there for a reason. And I really do believe in it, because if someone copied my image directly and then sold it and made money from it, I'm telling you, I would be suing them. So that's a very good point. Delta Dave said Profoto is firing a shot across the bow to protect the B10. You may be right, Delta Dave. Casper said, great show. Thanks, Casper. Gerald said, Amazon sells USB cables that work fine with the Sigma MC11 updates. Not to worry if you use the original. Oh, okay. Thanks for that, Gerald. PJ Smith said, I hope the lawsuit fails, because if it succeeds, then we'll never have another round head on a camera or a speed light. Stephen said, the B10 is a knockoff of the AD200. I don't know how you work that out, Stephen. It's nothing like the AD200. Let me grab the B10. Now, Stephen, how can you tell me that with a round head like that, that has the controls on the back like this? Stephen, how is that a knockoff of the AD200? Now, please, if you think that, you need glasses more than I do. Okay. What else have we got? Zoe Moment says, but the thing I don't think about, but the thing is, I don't think Godox stole the design. Triple says, there are always those that don't want cheap Chinese knockoff. Profoto should have some confidence in their 1000 quality. Casper said, no Fuji talk this Sony only. Oh, Aaron, yeah, he was talking about Aaron. So moments here, China does not really have copyright. Langston says, but what IP are they protecting? A shape? Stephen said, B1X is a copy of the Cirrus 100. Well, I'm waiting to see how you say that Profoto B1 is a copy of the AD200. PJ said, exactly, any round head on camera speed light will work like that. Langston said, I'm being serious here. I see it as an Android versus Apple iOS. Langston said, it's like trying to say the candy bar form factor is stolen. Well, we had an interesting discussion all about that, guys, didn't we? Really did. Let me know in the chat box down below anyway, because I'm sure I'm going to get some interesting things on that one. I can't wait to see what some of you have got to say. But like I said, I only ever delete ones that have ridiculous swearing and stuff like that. Apart from that, they always go in. So I won't be getting rid of it apart from that. Any last questions before we finish for the day, guys? I know it's getting late, particularly for you Europeans and Americans. Thanks so much. I think today's been a really good show, actually. I've really enjoyed it. I love a decent debate. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Let me know in the chat too who has got the 135 on pre-order. I'd love to know that as well, to see what sort of, well, what we think about demand is going to be out there. So please let me know, because I'd love to know that. Apart from that, let me know also about the Samyang, whether anyone thinks that that's going to be a great lens to get. I'd love to know that as well. It seems that I missed a great show. Gather said. Tim said, is this chat still going? I've had a second haircut. I love it. Now that we've had that argument with me and Steve, I love it. It's fantastic. I'm out of here, Tim. I love it. All right, guys. Gonna head off for the day. Copyrights have to be protected. Yes, they do, flying high or low. All right, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go and get another beer to calm down. I love it. Thanks so much, everyone. We had a great show. It was fantastic. Bye for now.